Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of The Period Party. This episode, we're talking about Menstrual Hygiene Day and how to get involved and celebrate it with Tiffany Prescott. Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty awesome. Hi, Nat.
Hi. I was like, I'm here too.
Hi.
No.
I know. I was going to get to you. Don't worry.
No,
I always feel
okay.
like I don't know who to say hi to first.
Of course. No, we want to say hi to Tiffany first. That's very important. And
yeah, I know, right? Our guest.
I'm really happy to just listen.
In that case. So I feel like we always have to start our show off with some silliness because this is how we roll. Okay, so I want to jump right in because this is really interesting, and I think it's something that we don't ever really talk about. I mean, I know it comes around once a year, Menstrual Hygiene Day, but this is not a conversation that a lot of us have, especially in the first world, because we don't really have to worry about these issues. So we're talking about Menstrual Hygiene Day and what exactly it is, why women should be celebrating it, and there's also a hashtag Menstruation Matters. We're going to be talking about that as well, and also why 2016 is an even bigger year for periods than 2015 was. 2015 was dubbed the year of the period, in case some of you listeners didn't know that. And then we're going to just discuss about how to get involved in the menstrual movement. Tiffany is an activist, health educator, and a dog mom, known for her love affair with reading and word tattoos, and she's responsible for the largest Menstrual Hygiene Day event open to the public. It's called PDX Red Party. It's happening in Portland, Oregon this Saturday. So I'll just also say, too, that Tiffany is dedicated to improving her community and creating social change and is particularly passionate about menstrual hygiene because it intersects with so many other important issues, including public health and hygiene, education, gender, environment, and social equity. She graduated from Portland State University in 2015. She's a young one with a degree in community health education and will be pursuing her master's in communications at her alma mater beginning this fall. So you guys should check out periodicinc.org when you get a chance, and of course PDX Red Party as well. So hi, guys. Again, I just wanted to get all that out of the way. Tiffany, hi. So I'm really curious about Menstrual Hygiene Day and, you know, what it is, what it stands for, why we should be celebrating and this day.
Yeah. Okay. So first, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Menstrual Hygiene, yeah, thank you. So with Menstrual Hygiene Day, it was founded by an organization called Wash United. And it started as a social media campaign, but then in 2014, they actually pinned it down to May 28th. And really, the goal of the day is to break the silence around menstruation, to unify organizations and, I guess, like influencers, activists, and bring everyone together to start talking about why menstruation matters. And the hashtag Menstruation Matters is kind of the I guess, like slogan for the day and for all the efforts. So you can, you know, if you're following along on social media, you know, tons of organizations all over the globe are actually using that Menstruation Matters tag. You kind of touched on this, like in the U.S., we're not necessarily talking about menstruation or even really that aware about issues regarding menstruation. I think that sometimes people have an awareness about, you know, developing countries and issues that people might face while they're on their period. You know, we talk about things like, you know, not being able to pray while you're on your period, or not even being allowed in the house or to touch certain household items while you're on your period. And we see that in developing countries and not so much here in the U.S., but there are definitely other issues regarding menstruation here in first world countries, and here in the U.S. and New York, all the way over here to Portland where I'm at. And so that's kind of where I wanted to jump in and get involved and do an event right here in my hometown.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit about Periodic and how you decided to come up with Periodic and what the event is going to be like on Saturdays.
So really, Periodic exists, and it came from my initial efforts with PDX Red Party. So what had happened was I was looking for an organization to get involved with, maybe do some volunteer work after I had graduated. And that's when I discovered that May 28th was Menstrual Hygiene Day. And I was really excited. I was like, this is so cool. I've always been kind of interested in reproductive health, and to find out that there was a whole day around menstruation, I was just, I guess, ecstatic. And I searched through the events, and I didn't really find a whole lot listed there. And I found out later that there were a couple of smaller events here in Portland and, dabbled all over the country and all over the globe. But at the time, I only saw one listed in the U.S., and it was in Colorado, and it was relatively small. And I turned to my sister, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was something here in Portland? And then I was like, wait a second. Wouldn't it be cool if we did something here in Portland? And that just kind of unleashed this whole flood of creativity, and we spent hours planning what would this event look like, how would we get people to come, what would we have to offer them, and how do we get people even talking about menstruation, because it's kind of a taboo subject. And we got a ton of support from our community as we started talking about, we named it right then and there, PDX Red Party. So with Saturday's event, basically we just made it a giant period party. So we kind of have a couple of goals with it. Really, we wanted to reduce stigma, provide some education opportunities, and raise awareness to some of these global and domestic issues around menstruation. So we've invited all of our menstrual-related organizations here in Portland and a couple from the surrounding area to come and talk about their products and services in a really fun and interactive way. So we have really fun games that are kind of, I guess, some people just laugh when they hear them. So we have pin the pad in the panties, and we have a tampon toss, and the art of menstruation. So exactly. So think of it almost like a period carnival. We have created a system where we're using pads and tampons as currency. So when you come in, you'll get a pad, and you can win more pads as you play games and win the games. And then you can exchange those for raffle tickets. And we're having this huge raffle. We've got a lot of prizes that are fun. Some of them are menstrual related, and some of them aren't. So we're hoping that people will, I guess, have an incentive to play some of these games and talk with our vendors, and then win some prizes.
That is so cool.
That's cool. That sounds like fun. I'd like to go to that.
Yeah, I know, me too. No kidding. I feel like you have to start a global PDX Red Party for Menstruation Day.
That's really our hope. So, we're starting great here in Portland, and we had hoped that we would be able to make it out to New York this year, but it wasn't able to happen. But, we're kind of hoping that we can create sort of a template and use this as, a model for having red parties pop up, not just in our country, but all over the globe, really, and get people really comfortable touching and interacting with menstrual hygiene products, talking about menstruation. And I think that, one of the easiest ways to do that, like I said, is to just make it really approachable and silly. And, some of our games are in that kind of nostalgic carnival fashion. And I think people might, feel more inclined to engage in that way.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know that you're using the hashtag Menstruation Matters. I want to know how much resistance you get. I was on social media the other day, and I saw someone put something up, and it said, why do periods have to last an entire week? After an hour, I'm sure I'm not pregnant, so let's just move on now. All of that is just unnecessary. It's there is so much to bleeding. It's seen as, this massive inconvenience. It's, some people think it's dirty, and I know that's obviously why you're doing what you're doing, but do you, what is it, or how is it that you're communicating to these people that do come up to you and say these sorts of things?
We definitely do get a lot of resistance. We've been doing some mini events, here in Portland to promote the work of our vendors that we're partnering with for this event, and then also just to get people excited about PDX Red Party. And there's always a handful of people who are like, what do you mean menstruation matters? Like, we don't have issues here in the U.S., or like you mentioned, like periods are gross. I don't want to talk about this. Why would I want to celebrate a period? And I think that so far we've been really successful in meeting that with, I guess like facts, right? That even right here in the U.S. we have a ton of people who are living on our streets and experiencing homelessness. And something that we don't always think about is like it can be more difficult to find menstrual hygiene products than it is to find food or shelter for the day or for the evening. And our spotlight organization is Camions of Care. We've also done some work with Untabooed out there in New York. And both of those organizations are specifically addressing that need. But those are just two organizations, and I know there's more out there. But there's a ton of people who are living on the streets and aren't getting what they need, and that creates health complications. And it's also deeply rooted in shame, and they're not able to, I guess, like experience their menstrual cycle with dignity and stay clean. And I think that those are basic human rights. Usually that's a good way to kind of bring people back down to earth and say, like, yeah, we're having this really fun celebration, and maybe, to you get this choice of like, well, I'm not a big fan of my period, but you get to actually choose if you want to celebrate that or not and come out and party with us or not. And some people don't have that choice. They're, they don't have access to what they need to live like a healthy and dignified, clean life. So
I think that's so important, Tiffany. Yeah, I was going to say, because I feel like that's a big issue. I mean, for millions of women in many developing countries, and so we're a little spoiled, obviously, in the first world, because, and of course, and then you look at homeless women, because I know that's a massive issue in New York, and there are quite a few organizations tackling the problem here. Now, I don't know what that's like in Australia, but I mean, we have a pretty significant homelessness problem in the United States. But then, of course, there are, like I said, so many millions of women and girls in developing nations that just do not have access to anything at all. And I'm curious how you're bringing light to that, or if you are.
Yeah, so our Spotlight organization is called Camions of Care. It's a Portland-based nonprofit that is run entirely by high school students, and they distribute menstrual care packages to people experiencing homelessness. And I believe they have chapters in several different states, but also in a few different countries too. And a lot of their work is done, just here in Portland. And so while our event is free, we are encouraging donations, and all of our donations will go to Camions of Care. And then, of course, like I said earlier, we're using pads as currency. So we're going to be donating all of those menstrual hygiene products back to Camions of Care to be used in those care packages as well. It's a really great organization, so for anyone listening, definitely check them out. Like I said, it's run entirely by high school students, and so it's an incredibly inspiring group to work with, and we're really happy to have them at PDX Red Party and to be able to give back to them.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, I don't think our homeless rates are quite as high as some places, but I mean, obviously there's still homelessness in Australia and in Melbourne, and certainly these women, they don't, you're right, they don't have access to many of the things that we all take for granted. So I think, it's so important that this message is spread not just locally for you guys, but everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other way that we're kind of incorporating this raising awareness piece is, so my sister and I were in New York on vacation just a couple of months ago and totally fell in love. But also, like I mentioned, we've connected with several organizations out there. And so we're really excited to be having a live-streamed discussion panel on menstruation matters. So we have so far 4 panelists from New York that are going to be we're using Google Hangouts, so you'll get this video stream of them talking about menstruation matters and talking about it on a global scale and why it's important to them, why it's important to the work that they're doing. So that educational piece is definitely crucial to our event.
Yeah, so tell me about 2016 being even bigger for periods, because 2015 was a pretty big year. So I'm just curious, like what makes 2016 different?
So I think that 2015, and this is in a lot of conversations that I'm having with different organizations that are partnering with us. But one person kind of put it best. She said that 2015 was basically just announcing, like, hey, periods exist, which, I'm sure that we all knew periods exist, but it wasn't something that our, media sources had really confirmed or talked openly about. There's been a lot of silence or dancing around the topic of menstruation. And I have to agree with that. 2015 was this announcement, hey, periods do exist. These periods are happening all over the world. And
they sure do.
Right. 2016, we're seeing not just that they exist, but here are some issues around menstruation that we're seeing, and this is how menstruation is affecting people in different communities and within their own bodies, with menstrual disorders that are making headlines, and people are not shying away from the language around menstruation, so actually seeing words out there like pads and tampons and blood. There will be blood was a Newsweek article that was published recently. I definitely think that we're taking this next step forward and not just saying, hey, periods exist, but here's why they're important, and here's why we've been talking about it for a year now. Here's how you can get involved and give back and help. And I think that that's kind of crucial to what I hope we see in the future, which is more research, more funding for research, and more people who are interested in exploring menstruation and offering better solutions for everyone that has a period. Because we haven't quite gotten there yet, but I think we're building.
We sure are. There for sure has been far more media coverage of periods in a somewhat more positive light over the last year, and I think that we can only go up from here. But I am curious because I feel like there are still so many people who, they still have a pretty negative view. And I know Nat was asking you this earlier. Do you have any advice for, especially young women around your age? Do you have any advice for them around this? What should they take away from your message?
Well, I think that, so for young people, even just being able to start a conversation about menstruation, maybe not sneaking your pads or your tampons when you have to go to the bathroom. One of the really awesome things about working with Camions of Care is, like I said, it's run entirely by high school students, and we have another organization that's coming out to Pediatric Party called Project DOT, and it's also a high school-based organization. And so when I interact with them, I feel like this next generation, these people even younger than I am, they're so comfortable talking about it, and even when I went through sex education, boys and girls were split up, and the boys learned whatever they learned in their private room, and we talked about periods in ours, and got to see a pad and tampon for the first time. What I noticed in this kind of younger group is that they're all mixed in, boys and girls together, talking about menstruation, which I think is really powerful because it's a lot easier to talk openly about menstruation if you learned it with the other gender. And I think that it goes a long way to reducing shame when we're bringing men and boys into the conversation as well. So I think that really my advice is to keep talking about it, keep participating, keep roping everybody into the conversation, not just keeping this as a women's issue, which I think is how it's been pegged for so long. This is really like a community issue. This is a global issue, something that affects all of us in some way, even if you don't have a period yourself.
I've heard another one of those stupid research studies the other day be announced that, it's unhealthy for women to have periods. We don't need them, that it's unhealthy, that it's like,
I'm so annoyed by this.
I know, right? I did a presentation with one of Australia's top IVF specialists a little while back. And when we sat down to nut out the plan of how the event was going to run, he looked at me and he said, well, periods aren't really necessary anyway. And I looked at him and I'm like, really? Really? You're really going to have that conversation with me right here, right now? And he's like, well, they're not. Throughout history, women haven't always menstruated. I think this is the funniest argument of all time, right?
What?
He's like, women haven't always regularly menstruated. They've had periods of time where they haven't. I said, yeah, probably because either they were either breastfeeding, they were experiencing famine, or some we don't have to deal with. I mean, breastfeeding we do, and that's normal and natural, and we're always advocate for, breast is best if possible. But it's like, I just was looking at him like, that is not even true, dude. Like, you can't sit here and say that to me without me giving a really good argument. Anyway, I kept on pushing the point, and I was like, no, you're wrong. When your body is in an optimal state of health and well-being, you will get a regular period because that is what it's supposed to do. And by the end of the conversation, he was like, all right, hey, you're right, fine, sorry. I was like, we just need to educate people because, I feel like any given chance to try and find a way to justify why you don't need it, people will take it.
I totally.
Agreed.
I've heard those I agree with you, and I've heard those arguments that like menstruation isn't natural, and it totally dumbfounds me as well. Just on a more personal note, I've recently, like in the past almost a year, about a year, my own menstrual cycle just went from being very regular, very consistent, predictable, to being unpredictable, and I was totally caught off guard by it, and I went through a stretch where I didn't menstruate for about 2 months, and I was totally just like, oh, and I knew it was related to all the rest of my health, and when I finally did menstruate, I felt this kind of like cleansing, and just felt like a lot better about being on a normal cycle, and I totally don't understand when people say that it's not natural. I've read one argument for like a really fad diet that was really popular a couple of years ago, and they were like, if you're doing this diet correctly, you'll stop menstruating.
Oh my
and I was
God.
completely appalled. Like, that is the most unthinkable advice. Like, no, don't do that.
I can't.
How much of a dumbass are these people, honestly? But the other thing too is I guess a lot of people don't like having their period because it comes with a whole heap of symptoms, and that's where we're advocating to help people understand that a symptom is a sign of your body's trying to tell you exactly what's wrong, and use that to really motivate you to sort it out, because we're here to say it shouldn't be painful. You shouldn't feel crap. You might feel a little bit like you need to take a little bit of downtime, and that's fine. It's a party that's about to go on. You're not necessarily invited. But I think, there's like a whole lot going on, and kind of your job is to just chill out. Your job is to chill out and let it all happen and just be, be a bystander. But I think, this is probably one of the main reasons people have reservations or hate their periods. And, I hope that you're able to educate them as well in that sense too, that, if you hate it, there's a reason, let's look at why.
Yeah, well, I think that kind of brings up the idea of menstruation matters even in first world or developed countries, because even though maybe, as a whole, we're not experiencing as many issues related to access, or we're not shunned from our homes while we're on our periods, but there's still this kind of like it's not really socially acceptable to talk about it. And when you do talk about it with somebody that you trust and you say, like, hey, I've been having really bad cramps lately, I think that the overwhelming idea out there and thought process out there, cramps are normal, period pain is normal, like just suck it up and get over it, when really that pain, if you're experiencing cramps and they're really severe and it's happening continually, month after month, that's a sign that you need to go into your healthcare provider or look at your overall state of health. Like, is your body telling you something? And that's not really the advice that we get around menstruation. So, even here in developing countries, there are issues that this shame and silence around menstruation are, I guess, forcing us to neglect. We're not taking care of ourselves optimally because we won't talk about it.
So true. I was going to say, by the way, there was this article that came out on NPR a couple days ago, and I posted about it. Is the same thing. I think it might have been very similar, actually, to what you're talking about, Nat, or the same thing. And they were just, that was the question: are periods necessary? And the comments underneath this article, so many women feel so strongly that they hate their periods, they hate the symptoms that come with it. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, ladies. That's the bottom line.
Yes, we really do. So, I don't know, is your vagina necessary? Seriously, do you need your eyeball? I just don't understand this concept of it's there for a reason.
Just taking things away.
Yeah,
well, and then think about, let's just cut this out. It doesn't work very well, or I don't really like how it works, so we're going to get rid of it, like our gallbladder or our appendix or whatever.
Totally. You know that I learned the other day, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I do trust the person that told me, that, it's not vagina related, it's actually tonsils related. But when you have your tonsils removed, but they grow back?
Yeah.
So what's the point of that?
I think I have heard that.
Stupidest thing ever. I'm like, let's just take them out so that they can grow back. Anyway, enough of that.
Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of nuts. Anyways, that's a whole other radio show. Removal of organs and bodily parts that we don't really like how they work.
So funny. So funny. So, we're running out of time, but is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I guess just if you go on to the Menstrual Hygiene Day website, there are events listed all over the globe for this weekend and even the next couple of days leading up to it. So any listeners out there that aren't in Portland, go ahead and check that out and see if there's an event that you can get involved with that's near you. And then for anyone that's in the Portland area or is willing to drive over, if you're in parts of Washington or something, I hope to see you at PDX Red Party. Like I said, it's going to be a huge period party, a lot of fun, and in some ways we're really making history by having this huge event open to the public about periods. So, yeah.
I know. You are really, yeah. Oh, Nat, go ahead. I was just saying she really is making history. It's so awesome.
The website, just for listeners, I know you mentioned the website, but do you want to give the website address?
Yeah, so it is menstrualhygieneday.org. All of the words are spelled out in full. menstrualhygieneday.org. And they have an event.
And your website. Yeah, and your website too, Tiffany.
Yeah, so our website is periodicinc.org. And then right on the homepage, you can click PDX Red Party to get some more information about the event this Saturday. And then also we're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram under Periodic Inc. if you want to follow us and keep up with us.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insight on menstruation and why it matters, as well as Menstrual Hygiene Day. We're really, really grateful for people like you who are leading movements like this because, like I said earlier, we have a lot of work to do in this world, and you're part of a really cool global movement that I think is only going to just grow over the next couple of years. And I'm excited to see where you take this. So thank you again for being on the show with us today, lady.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to connect with both of you and kind of share our passion for menstruation and have a fun chat about it. So thank you.
Of course, you're welcome.
Thanks, guys.
All right, well, we're going to wrap this show up. Bye. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.